Welcome to Haverchat, a Haverkamp culture cast where we take you behind the scenes here at Haverkamp Group. My name is Todd Wiesenberg and I'm the Chief Culture Officer at Haverkamp. And today our guest is our owner and visionary, Brent Haverkamp. Thanks for being a guest here on the genesis of Haverchat, episode 1.
Good morning, Todd.
Yes, great to be here. Great to be here. Well, let's get things rolling. And I want to always begin our episodes with a connect piece. And I'd like to ask you a series of questions that all have the letter F in them. I'd like to know where you're from. And when I say from, Brent, born, raised, and then also the from of your professional journey. Okay, so the first one will be from. The second one will be family, whatever you're comfortable sharing, your family growing up, current family situation. The third F is fun. What do you like to do for hobbies, interests, passions, those type of things? And then the fourth and final F that we'll talk about is the future. You know, where do you see yourself in the future, the organization, what's in store? So let's start with the from.
Yeah, I grew up in Sibley, Iowa. What's always an interesting part of my story is my dad was an immigrant to this country. And so he immigrated when he was in his early 20s from Holland. And kind of one of the favorite stories about my dad is he couldn't speak English when he came to this country. And when he went to a restaurant, he would always try to go to ones that had either a picture on the wall or a picture on the menu, because then he could point to it and he would know what to buy. And so, working class parents and small town Iowa, farming community. My grandparents on my mom's side were farmers that just lived 20 miles away in Worthington, Minnesota. And so I grew up, I think like a lot of kids in my area in the 70s and early 80s, doing a lot of baling hay, walking beans, detasseling corn. And that was kind of my normal childhood.
Okay. As far as growing up in the school, just got any school stories that you'd like to share?
Yeah. I went to, I didn't go to school. I grew up in Sibley, Iowa, but I didn't go to school in my town. And so I went to high school at 35 miles away, Hull Western Christian. And probably my best story is it was a basketball school. And so we didn't play football, and so basketball was everything. And luckily, I was tall, but I didn't have very many skills. And so, but because of my height, I was able to play some. And we won a state championship my senior year of high school. And our coach was just in his second or third season. I don't quite remember. But he was kind of a legendary coach. I believe his name was Jim Ekoff, and he won the most titles, I believe, of any coach in Iowa school history. I think he had 7 or 8 state titles. And so we were his first one in 1985.
Okay.
So,
I think that's probably where we first met, Brent, was at the courts, on the courts at Iowa State University, either at Bayer or State Gym or something like that.
Basketball, really had a hold of me. And so I would play multiple times a week when I came here to Iowa State and as a student. And then I worked for Iowa State for 4.5 years, and we would play multiple times a week. And so over the lunch hour. And so I played a lot of basketball those early years.
Brent, you mentioned Iowa State University. What brought you to Iowa State University?
Yeah, I think it was more of a desire to experience the broader world than it was Iowa State. And it was probably the fact, so realize neither one of my parents went to a 4-year college, but my sister went to Iowa State. And so I was already familiar with it. And so they would have me as a student. I kind of knew what it was, but really what attracted me was, as strange as this sounds today, Ames was the big town. And so it seemed like a large town, it's probably 50,000. I came here in the fall of 1985. Graduated in 1989, and the university was probably 25,000 students or so at that time. And to me, that seemed like the big, broad world. And I really wanted to see what was it that the world had that a town of 2,900 in northwest Iowa didn't have. And so that's what I wanted to find.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right. So you went to Iowa State University, graduated. What was your degree in?
I graduated with a computer science degree.
Okay.
And, the 80s, everything was kind of brand new in the computer world, and I was attracted to that. And so I got a computer science degree, and then I went to work for Iowa State University in what they called at that time their Administrative Data Processing Center, ADP. And they did all the business computing side of the university, and so hired me as a systems analyst. And so at that time you would have mini computers or mainframe computers, and then you'd have terminals that would work. And so I would often arrange the programs to run and to allocate system memory and that sort of thing. And then a couple of years later, PCs became a big deal, and I started to set up PC networks for Iowa State in the business unit. And so I worked for Iowa State from 1989 until probably 1994. So.
Okay. Well, 1994 is kind of a key year in our history. What was it about 1994 that changed?
Yeah. So it was really interesting. Once I started working for Iowa State, I knew it was not my end place. And it was just nothing critical, but people, even my age, would talk about their retirement plans. And, Iowa State was a very stable place to work, but it wasn't very entrepreneurial. Mm-hmm. And people would talk about, well, I'm this classification of employee, and in 5 years I can be that classification of employee. And that was never attractional to me. Mm-hmm. And so very shortly after I started for Iowa State, I said, I'm not in the right place. And so started buying real estate, started by buying the house next door and then some smaller other properties. And so I knew very quickly that I wanted to be in a profession that didn't necessarily, probably the best way to say it is it rewarded accomplishment. Mm-hmm. And so I was looking for an alternative really early on when I started Iowa State. And so started buying real estate. As we talked about before, I did PC networks. And by 1994, I maybe had a handful of properties, but that wasn't enough to support my family. And so started my own business. It was called Net Results. And we set up PC networks for businesses. My first client was a large law firm in downtown Des Moines that I worked at maybe 3 days a week. And then the rest of the time, I worked on real estate. So,
what was it about real estate that attracted you? I mean, it seems kind of like a jump from computer science to real estate.
Yeah. The interesting story was my wife and I, Tori, we bought a little house in Campus Town right after I graduated. And perhaps 6 months later, the house across the street went up for sale. And so we would call that today a FSBO, for sale by owner. And the owner was just pounding a sign in the yard. And I went over and talked to him and said, how much are you wanting for the house? And he said, I want $75,000 for the house. And I said, great. And then I eventually talked to the tenants. And I asked them, what are you guys paying per rent? And they said, well, $150. And so there's 6 of them. It was a big turn of the century house. And so I was analytical. And so I did the math and I said, I think somebody could earn a couple $100s a month if they bought this house and they did it right. And that was just really interesting to me. And so I'd never done anything like that before. And called my parents, borrowed a few $1,000s, put that together with a little bit of money that we had. And I ended up buying the house. And that was a pivotal moment for me. And because all of a sudden I was able to fix up the house a little bit, raise the rents. And before I knew it, I was earning a few $100s a month from the house, which was really meaningful money to me at the time. And I said, well, I spend 40 hours a week, earning maybe a couple $1,000s a month. Why can't I do this again and again? And so I'm a reader. And so at that time, I literally, either checked out a library or bought any book on investment real estate I could find. And I just started to educate myself on what does it mean to be a real estate investor. And I have no idea why that captured me, but it did capture me. And so the rest of the story. I became very active in the real estate market and started then constructing. And in the next 15 years or so, we were able to accumulate nearly 1,000 units in Ames, Iowa by 2005 or so.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we're going to park that there for a moment, because we'll come back and talk about that journey and different, pivotal moments or watershed moments that you've had in your professional journey. But I want to transition to family. You mentioned Tori. Tell us about your family.
So growing up, I talked a little bit about my parents, and I had two sisters growing up. A sister that's a couple years older than me, and then a sister that's 13 years younger than I am. But I went to Iowa State, and my junior year here, I met my wife, Tori, fell in love. I say often that I was fortunate enough to graduate with a wife and a job and very little debt. And so I was pretty happy with that. Tori and I did what was really typical for our friends around us. We started having babies right away. We have 4 wonderful children, and 2 boys, 2 girls. Today, they're all married, and they are all having babies. And so big news, day before yesterday, my youngest son and his wife just had their second child, a little girl named Charlie Elaine. Charlie, yeah. Nice. And so Tori and I were at the hospital yesterday, and so that is our 7th grandchild, and our 8th, my oldest daughter, is due with in April. Wow. And so, yeah. So
well, congratulations, first of all. That's exciting news. Do you have a nickname as a grandpa? I mean, are you like Papa?
They call me Papa.
You are Papa.
Yeah.
All right. How about Tori?
Tori has struggled a little bit with the nickname. Our oldest granddaughter has called her Grandma Tori. That's not her favorite name. Okay. And so she's tried to move that a little bit, but with mixed success. But I latched onto Papa, and that works out really well because that's easy, for little guys and little girls to say.
What do you enjoy most about being a Papa?
That's easy. So for all those parents out there, being a parent is hard because you hold the responsibility of the future of your children in your hands, and it weighs on you. And you're worried if you're teaching them what they need to know. You're worried about whatever strengths and weaknesses they have. As a grandpa, it's mostly about enjoyment. And so you clearly see the strengths and weaknesses of your grandchildren, but you don't stress about them because you're not responsible for them. And so you get to enjoy them more for what they are, and you let their parents worry about, disciplining and their character weaknesses and all of those types of things. And so so I never worry as a grandpa about those types of things.
Just get to be the fun guy.
That's right.
Just get to be the fun guy. Well, thanks for sharing all those stories about your family. What are some things you like to do for fun, hobbies, interests, passions?
Yeah. As you know, I'm a pilot, and so that's probably my predominant fun passion. And so I get to fly quite a bit, 2-3 times a month. Monday, I'll take a trip to Phoenix with a group of us. And so, I've been fortunate enough to have a whole sequence of airplanes over the years, and to upgrade those and to And so now I have a great cross-country airplane that really I fly almost anywhere in North America. So, yeah.
How'd you get into piloting? What was the trigger?
So 25 years ago, my wife and I built the house just south of town and just happened to be just south of the airport. And, if I was working on the yard, I would always see these little planes just kind of circling overhead. And it was always interesting to me. I had nobody in my family that was a pilot. I had no experience with small airplanes. I just didn't know anything about it. And so one day after work, I stopped into the airport, and these were pre-internet days. And so I said, "Hey, tell me about this flying thing. How does it work? What does it cost?" All of those questions. And the guy kind of looked at me and he said, "Do you have $100? And I said, "Yeah, I got $100. He said, "You pay me $100. And he said, "I'll take you up for an hour and you can fly the airplane." I said, "Okay, let's do it." And so he put me in the left seat of some little old airplane, and I flew it for an hour, and it took away all the mystery for me. And all of a sudden I realized, I can do this. And, a lot of people are kind of fascinated by, the mechanics of flight, or that wasn't my deal. What attracted me was the freedom of it, and the freedom of getting up in the morning and be able to go wherever you want to go, whenever you want to go, on your own schedule, and kind of the accomplishment of it. And so, so flying's been kind of a big part of my life for the last, I got my license in 98, so 26 years.
Obviously, I know you, Brent. I know this passion for flying, but I also know that you have used it to be, I'll say, a blessing to others, and you've used it in lots of ways that are tied to other passions of yours. You want to talk about those passions and how flying ties into that a little bit?
Yeah, I work a lot nowadays with a nonprofit called the SALT Network. And the SALT Network is a church planting organization that works at starting churches in college towns across the country. And so far, we've planted 33 churches through the SALT Network, and I'm very involved with that nonprofit. I'm on the board, but probably the fun thing, I got to do two fun things that are kind of in my passion, is I got to travel a lot. And so of those 33 churches, I've been to 32 of them. And so, during this time of year, it's pretty common, a couple weekends a month, we'll travel. That's what I'm going to do next week when I go to Phoenix. And but I get to travel with SALT Network, and we get to visit and encourage these churches. The second thing that I get to do is I really help these new churches get into their first building. And so I work on the real estate side. Starting a church is very entrepreneurial. It's very similar to starting a business. And so you need a place to meet, you need employees, and you need customers. And so I really enjoy that process. But my job with SALT Network is to help those churches get into their first permanent facility. And so that combines some real estate knowledge, and then if I get to fly there, that combines some piloting process. And so those two things are fun for me.
I also know something that is fun for you is being outdoors. I'm looking around this room that we're in now, and I see lots of pictures from Wyoming. Talk about Wyoming and that passion you have there.
7-8 years ago, Tori and I were really fortunate to buy a ranch in northwest Wyoming, up close to Yellowstone. And, the reason that place was attractional is it had such world-class views and world-class hiking. And so probably the place that I feel the most alive is outdoors hiking. And if you've spent any time in the Intermountain West, I think probably the overwhelming feeling is how small it makes you feel. And the landscape is so big and the sky is so large, it somehow shrinks us. And I always feel like that's sort of the appropriate spot for me. Sometimes I live pretty large in my world, in my life, and being in a isolated place in what I believe to be one of the most beautiful spots in the world, and seeing God's creation in that environment always kind of, I think, gives me the proper perspective on life.
That's really good. That's really good. I've been fortunate to spend some time out there and been blessed by the space out there as well. And I would just say amen to all that. It definitely has that kind of impact on a person.
Yeah. I think that I see God as creator in that environment most clearly.
Yeah. It's kind of hard not to.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the future. Specifically, I mean, what's next for you? What's next for the organization as you think about future?
Yeah. So it's really interesting. If you think in terms of basketball game, there's 4 quarters. In basketball, I guess college basketball, you have 2 halves, but
we'll go with the 4 quarters.
We'll go with 4 quarters.
Okay.
And so I'm probably pretty close, if not in the 4th quarter of my basketball game. And so, I think early on, I think it was a lot about accomplishment and what can I accomplish. Now it's a lot more about, okay, what can this organization become? And, you've been with me, I think, for 20 years now, and you see how we've grown from a very small entrepreneurial organization where I made most of the decisions to a mid-size organization where I make a small minority of the decisions. And so that's been a great journey for me in terms of, okay, how do we empower great leaders in our organization? And how do we, I had a business coach once, and he said, well, step 1 is you need a self-managing company. And what he meant by that is you have individuals in your organization that can manage the company outside of yourself. And really, I think over the last 10 or 15 years, that's what we've done here at Haverkamp Group. And we've created a self-managing organization, so an organization that I don't have to manage. But step 2 is to create a self-multiplying company. And that's a more difficult thing as a visionary leader, as an entrepreneurial leader. So how do you create an organization that grows and thrives and multiplies outside of my direct effort? And so I think that's the stage that we're in now, and we're working on that. So I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah.
No, you did. You did. In fact, that's a great kind of lead into what I want to talk about as far as creating some curiosity. As you think about the future, I know in 2020, you had a 10X vision that in 20 years that you wanted to grow by 10 times. We're now 5 years into that journey. Do you think it's still attainable? Just, what are your thoughts after being now a quarter of the way through that vision?
I think sometimes our own thinking is really limiting to us. And if we think in terms of, okay, I want to grow at 5% or 10%, then you have to use the same constructs that you have. But if you think in terms of, I want to grow 10 times, well, there's no way to get from where you are to 10 times your size, either 10 times your employees, 10 times your revenue, 10 times your units, however you want to think about that. And so when you put a 10 times vision out in front of an organization, it forces that organization to think differently and to say, okay, I manage, perhaps we were at 3,000 units or whatever we were at 5 years ago. And okay, if we had 30,000 units, well, how would I do that? What sort of people would I need? What sort of organization would I need to have? And it really forces the organization to grow in their thinking. And so we put a 10 times goal out there 5 years ago, and it's absolutely achievable. And so if you were to map it out, I think we're just a smidge behind, what that goal would be, which I think is super motivational for the group, because we say, okay, we've grown almost at the pace that we need to. Now, what do we need to do as an organization to push forward and get the kind of growth that we think we need in order to grow 10 times. And so I've always believed that healthy things grow. And, now I have 4 grown children. I have 7 grandchildren. And, the latest granddaughter, she wasn't small. She was born 9 pounds. But as I held her, you just hold her in your hands. But in 20 years, she'll be a fully functioning adult. Maybe I'll be at her wedding, whatever that may be. And so that's a healthy thing, and a healthy thing grows. And I believe our organization will grow and as it becomes healthy. So, yeah.
As you were sharing that story, those words came into my mind immediately. Healthy things grow, because I've heard you say that multiple times, and it's so true. Why would people want to be a part of what Haverkamp is doing? Yes, healthy things grow. People like to be a part of something that's successful like that. But, why would investors, or maybe even future employees, or even our customers, want to be connected with Haverkamp?
Yeah, I think opportunity. When we hire an awful lot of young people into the property management business, whatever it is, and oftentimes we'll be their first job. And as I think about my organization, I can think of a number of people that have started for me, at that ground floor, and have just, grown with the organization. And so I think a growing organization provides a lot of opportunity for investors. Today I was on a phone call, with a very successful family, and they said, "Well, tell me your story." And so I just told them the story. How did we get to where we are here? And it's just very attractional, because it produces confidence with the investors. And hey, what we've done in the past, we're just going to continue to do those things. The culture that we've built, the values that this company is built on, those are going to continue. Those are what have made us successful historically, and those are going to continue to make us successful in the future.
Great. I love it that you talked about culture. You talked about values, because that's what I have next on the list that I want to talk to you about. I can recall back in 2015 having a conversation with you and saying, I think it's important that we put our culture on paper, our values on paper, because it's such the North Star for an organization. It's that thing that we look to when we're trying to make decisions. And eventually your values, it's part of your decision making, part of your behaviors as an organization. And ultimately, as you were saying, it becomes your reputation. It becomes your reputation. As we were going through that journey back in 2015, meeting with you and meeting with other key employees, and we were mapping that out. Okay, what are our 5 core values? We just randomly said, I think 5 seems like a good number. Or maybe we had more, and then I know we had more to begin with, and we pared it down to the 5. But today our core values are stewardship, hard work, accountability, results driven, and then integrity. As you think about those core values, how have they impacted us to giving us success today? And then you talked a little bit about the future. How do you see that playing a role in our future as well?
I think those different values perhaps are more valuable in different stages of a person's career. And, if we want to take it all the way back, I talked originally about my dad a little bit. And when he came, he really had very few skills. He couldn't speak English. He grew up as a farmer, and so he was a blue-collar guy. But one thing that he had, and he was always willing to work harder than anybody else. And so as a kid, that hard work ethic just was really imprinted on me from an early age. And the idea was, if you work hard, then good things will happen to you. People will look to you, jobs will come your way, success will follow you. And so, so that I think particularly early on in either somebody's career or early on in an organization, I think, things like hard work are just super important because it sets habits, it sets expectations, those types of things. Now that we talked about, I'm in my fourth quarter of my career, things like results driven. And so sometimes young people that come into our organization, it might have more of the idea of, I need to put in my 8 hours of work, or I need to show up at work. And clearly, you need to show up, but it really is helpful what's the end? What's the result that you're trying to achieve? And so that's where I find myself, today thinking more about, not so much the hours that I work, but what are the results that both I and the organization is putting out there. And so I think all kinds of those things, really contribute to the success of our organization and any organization.
Again, going back to that 2015 time period when we started looking at core values, I remember something you said, and it just was etched in my brain. In fact, when I meet with every new employee and we go through our core values, when I talk about hard work, I say, Brent has told me early on that, I don't want people working for Haverkamp who have an attitude of that's not in my job description, and that we want to serve each other, and there's bigger things involved here and than just your job or your lane. Certainly we have roles and responsibilities, but there are times that we have to go above and beyond what our normal scope of work is and just help each other out. And so that's something that has just been an anchor in my mind, and it's fun to be able to share. I talk about your dad a lot when I meet with new employees and how I know that was such an impact in you, and now the results driven. So it's fun. And
here's an example. So just yesterday, so we are contemplating selling one of our projects. And so one of our leaders went to go visit that site and said, hey, we might be selling this property, and just wanted to prepare you for that and, have different goals around that. And what was really interesting about that is one of the employees just broke down crying. And it wasn't so much that she was afraid of losing her job. What she communicated was, I so enjoy working for Haverkamp. And she was afraid that she might lose that opportunity. And I think part of that is, and Todd, I really credit you for this, is we've been able to develop a culture that's supportive but allows people individuality. And she just felt a part of something bigger than herself that she didn't want to lose. And so so that's a real bummer for that situation, but it does really say something about what we're trying to build here as an organization.
As I was preparing for our time with one another, I told you I was just jotting down several different memories that I've had as far as my interactions with you. And one that came to mind was I'm sure you don't remember this, but we were flying over to Cedar Rapids. It was the early stages. We might have been doing our due diligence on Campus View and in Kirkwood Courts. It was just Kirkwood Courts at that time.
Yeah.
Or we may have already made the acquisition and we were just going over there and, getting things set up. But as we were flying over there, I can't remember exactly the question I asked you, but it had to do something like, what is your vision or what do you hope? Or, it was just centered around that when we talk about Haverkamp. And something you said, and again, this isn't verbatim, but what I remember you communicating was, Todd, I hope, my wish is that when people have either, done working with us or have lived with us or, interacted with us, that they would have said, my life is better because I've interacted with Haverkamp.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Housing is one of the needs that every human has. And so most people will live in an apartment, sometimes for a few years, sometimes for a major part of their life. And so we get the opportunity to interact with people over one of the absolute fundamentals of life. And so we can make that a good, high quality experience, or we can make that a poor experience. And I think, when I started this business, the word landlord, I think, had a higher reputation than what it does today. And that really bums me. And I think if everyone aspired, to have the highest quality housing, the highest quality interactions, then I think that word would enjoy a higher reputation in our culture than what it does now. And certainly that's what my aspiration is for this company, is when you think about those interactions, when you think about the quality of housing that we provide, this fundamental need that we give, all of our 10,000 plus tenants, I just want to enjoy the highest quality reputation that we can.
Well said. Well said. All right, shifting gears slightly, we've talked about different projects, and I was talking about, flying over to Cedar Rapids. What's some of the more memorable projects, or a favorite project, or something that you just really have enjoyed over these last 31 years?
Yeah. Boy, to be honest, my favorite project is always the current one that I'm working on. A few stick in my mind. And so, we've started a new direction about 5 years ago with our TiVo brand. And so that plus 55 housing, high quality, kind of top of the market housing for seniors is just a real fun one, because not only do we get to provide that critical housing need, but we also get to provide community to those individuals. And I just spent yesterday afternoon at a TiVo Ankeny, and again, I was reminded what a big part of the life that the community that we strive to develop at those communities provide our residents. And so it's fun for me to see every time that I go. And so we get to do the real estate, and we get to provide that critical community component that we aren't always able to achieve at our other projects. Another fun one is the one we just did in Emory North Liberty. And so we're building, we're in the middle of, we've stabilized or are stabilizing phase one of that project, but it's a large project. It's probably a $75-80 million project, conventional multifamily project in North Liberty, Iowa, and it encompasses several firsts for us. And so, first, number one, is we built a property outside of central Iowa. And so from a construction development perspective, hey, we were able to expand our geographic footprint. And so that grew our construction development team. And now we hope to do a project over in Omaha. So we're expanding that construction development. And it's also the first time that we probably did a serious job of raising outside equity. And so, as you know, historically, most of the equity has just been internal for us. And the last few years, we've done a more focused job of going outside of the normal friends and family and working on raising some institutional equity. And we were able to partner with a REIT on that transaction. And so that's been a great experience for us. And, partnering with institutional equity and larger equity sources for that project. So, phase one was just completed a few months ago, and we're nearly stabilized there. And so nothing I like better than to dream about a project, implement the project, and then have the project completed as we talked about. And we're very close to that on phase one at Emory North Liberty. And so, I love the satisfaction that brings.
I sometimes like to describe you as a dragon slayer. You're looking for that next thing to go out there and slay.
Yeah.
And so these, we talk about first time getting a project like Emory North Liberty going and outside of central Iowa. You're talking about Omaha. There's also some other firsts within Haverkamp Group. I'll say first because they're relatively new and they're new companies within Haverkamp Group. We got Haverkamp Investments and Haverkamp Farm Management. You want to talk about those two?
Yeah. So, as we already kind of touched on the investment side, and we decided to actually open our own brokerage. And so we actually got FINRA approval earlier this week or last week. And so now we have our own brokerage in-house. And so we can use that to more effectively find investors and investments into our projects. And so we're excited about doing that. We really believe that we have a compelling story. And if we tell that story to the right people, we think it's very attractional. And so we're learning how to tell that story well to the right people. And so Haverkamp Investments is going to help us accomplish that. Haverkamp Farm Management, that's kind of a fun one. I think about 7-8 years ago, as I was really concentrated in apartments, probably 95% of my net worth was in apartments. I'd sold a few, and I said, what else can I invest in that runs different inputs, different risk factors than apartments? And so we started buying Iowa farm ground. And we were fortunate in that the last 6 or 7 years, it's been a really good time to own farmland in Iowa. And so today, we own and manage, I think, around 7,500 acres of farms. And so probably 50, 60 different farms. And it's just been a lot of fun to learn about what makes an entirely different market run and how to finance that, how to invest in that. We'll see where that goes.
Well, you talked about the three essentials or the three fundamentals that every person in the world needs: food, clothing, shelter. So now you went from the shelter, now you're getting into the food side of things.
That's right. We're going to stay out of the clothing.
Yeah.
So
no desire for that.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. As I transition here into the celebrate part, there's lots of things to celebrate. Is there anything in particular you'd like to just really highlight and celebrate? Maybe it's a person, or again, maybe a project, or just something that you would really like to celebrate.
Yeah. I talked a little bit about our Emory North Liberty, and I think that's a really good example that takes almost everyone on our team. And so from the construction development guys, that they had to learn about, okay, we want to build something in Eastern Iowa. What does that take? Who do we need to hire? How do we manage projects remotely? What does that look like? We also had to raise equity investment for that project. Like I said, it's a large project, probably a $75 million project. And so we had a big chunk of equity that we needed to put in there. And so on the equity side, we were able to find those equity investors. Again, I said we partnered with a large REIT. So that was a really good experience and process for us. And then, last but not least, we have the whole property management side of that. And so, okay, we have a new startup property, and we think we're positioned well. And so how do we achieve our goals on that? And so we had to hire people. We had to train people. We had to, tell people in a different market, hey, this is what our culture is, and this is how we want you to represent our company in the marketplace. And so when something like that comes together, it involves dozens of people in my organization, all of whom, I'm sure I left, many facets out. There's a marketing component to that. Mm-hmm. And, but all those dozens of people have to come together in order for that to be successful. And so, we're almost stabilized at that property. And so it'll produce a return for the investors. And that's just super exciting for me.
All right. You want to give out any individual shout outs? I know you're very much a team guy. You recognize it's an organization, but there are some individuals. Here's your opportunity to give a shout out.
So Todd, you're sitting here right next to me. So we'll start with you.
Oh, I wasn't looking for that, but thank you.
Yeah, we'll start with you a little bit. And your 20th anniversary is coming up. And, you started on the property management side. And then as we grew as an organization, you took on so many of the culture things that we try to do. And so I see your touches in so many little different parts of the organization. And so part of it is I think if you were to add up, I probably have 8, 9, 10 employees that have been with me for roughly that, 20, close to that 20-year period that you have. And it's people like you that have attached themselves to the vision of what we're trying to accomplish here at Haverkamp that makes this organization go. And it's loyalty that you have, it's commitment to what we're trying to achieve, the ability to pivot when you need to pivot, that, really I think is that seasoning salt that goes throughout our organization. And so I think you typify the type of employees that really have helped this organization become successful.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And Brent, I wasn't looking for that. In fact, as you were, going through the story about Emory, I think of a guy like Zach Ludwig, who's very similar as far as his tenure, and a guy that has really grown with the organization as well. And his fingerprints are all over what's happened over in Eastern Iowa. And then I think of Dave Hyman, who's also been with the organization a long time as well. And his fingerprints over there from the property management side. So many key people. But, it goes back to you though, Brent. I'm going to deflect a little bit. And you've been a great role model for all of us as we have been working here, and it's been very exciting to be a part of it. Just thank you for having that vision, and thank you for believing in us when we first started.
It's been such a fun ride, and in fourth quarters you tend to reflect a little bit more.
Okay.
When I bought that first home, well over 30 years ago now, I never envisioned what that could be. So some of that, was accidental. Some of that was hard work, relationship. But to look back and to see the success of this organization is really humbling for me, because some of it's luck, some of it's blessings, some of it's just undeserved favor, so I'm just so grateful for the journey I've been able to be on. So,
talking about culture some more, I was reading an article and it kind of touches to what you just communicated a little bit ago. The key to having a stabilized culture is stabilized leadership.
Yeah.
And if there is an organization out there who's struggling with their culture, one of the things they have to look at is how stable has the leadership been.
Sure.
And so I'm very grateful for all the different people we've been able to work with over these last, for me, 20 plus years, for you longer. Think of a guy like Paul Wilkin, who obviously has been here for a long time as well.
25 years.
It was 25.
Celebrated this summer.
That's right. So lots of key players, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. So I'm going to transition here to a fun part.
Okay.
It's called Haverchamps.
Okay. I've never played this before.
These are just a series of kind of fun questions, just real quick answers.
So do you have any tips for me on how to succeed at this?
My tip would be just go with the first thing that comes to your mind. I'm going to try to get through these questions as quickly as possible. I'm actually going to put 94 seconds on my clock here.
And is 94 seconds, does that signify anything?
It does.
Oh,
Very
wow.
well played. I didn't even have to prompt you for
No,
that. Yeah.
I didn't know.
94 seconds because the year that you started Haverkamp, 94. So
all right.
That's the connection. All right. So I'm going to say these as fast as I can. And again, first answer, as you don't need to explain yourself.
Okay.
But we're going to get started here. Ready? Morning person or night owl?
Oh, morning person.
What's your favorite season?
Fall.
Beach vacation or mountain getaway?
Mountain.
Do you prefer books or movies?
Books.
Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
No.
What's your favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise.
If you could time travel, past or future?
Oh, future.
Favorite board game?
Monopoly. Easy.
I knew that one. If you could instantly master any skill, what would it be?
How to tell the future.
Okay. What's one word that best describes you?
Dedicated.
Favorite Haverkamp core value?
Hard work.
Best career advice you've received?
Don't worry about the failure.
Favorite company event or tradition?
I love our Christmas party.
Me too. One thing about our Haverkamp that you brag about?
I brag about its people.
One way you give back to the community?
Salt Network. Yeah.
Most rewarding part of your job?
Seeing new projects become completed.
Proudest moment in your career?
I hope I haven't seen that yet.
One word that describes the future of our company?
Exciting.
And last, if your personal mission statement?
The future is brighter than the past.
All right. Well, that actually brought us right up to the timer. Good
Wow.
job.
There we go. I made it through.
You did. That was exciting.
I didn't pass at all.
21. So we're going to have a leaderboard, Brent, and every
Okay.
person that comes in will have to participate in Haverchamp, and then we're going to see who's the best.
How many questions did you have?
Those were 21.
I'm competitive,
I know you are. I've played against you on the basketball court. All right. So as we wrap up here, Brent, what's one thing you wish you would have said that you didn't?
I want to make sure that I expressed enough gratitude for all of the opportunities and inputs, from anywhere from my wife, who gives me constant support. And so I get to do podcasts like these and talk about my accomplishments. None of those would have happened without her belief and her support. And she's just, I think, emblematic of so many people in my life that invested in me, believed in me, whatever it might be. And so I want just to express gratitude for all of those people. And I think they're a big part of what's been accomplished here.
Well, Brent, thank you for being guest number one, episode number one, the
All
genesis of Haverchat.
Very good.
Yes.
So will you do one of these a week, Todd? Or
That's great. We are going to be doing these the first Wednesday of the month is when we will.
One a month.
One a month as what we're going to start off with. We hope to grow that. But for right now, we're going to go with just the first Wednesday of every month. So this will be whatever the first Wednesday is March is when this one will be out there.
Thank you for being a great host.
Well, thank you for being a part of it. And I want to thank our audience for joining us today. And again, a special shout out to my man Graydon behind the cameras there. Thanks, Graydon. And so at Haverkamp, we believe the strongest cultures are built with intentional growth in mind and care. Culture isn't just one person's job, it's all of our jobs. And so with that, until next week, keep learning and keep leading.